Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Tuesday, May 31st, last day of May, 2022, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me, as always, is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
We've got all the time in the world. Wait, no, that's the
other
podcast we just recorded.
Yeah, nice. We are doing a nice little double header today, so peek behind the curtain. 3 weeks from now, you can go listen to our That Volunteer episode on No Time to Die, which we just recorded. Trevor, in lieu of the usual kind of rigmarole, because I just asked you how you were doing 2 hours ago, let's hop right into it. This is sort of a nice little, first 5 months of the year are done. This will go live tomorrow, so June 1st, as we kind of hit the halfway point for the year. We just kind of want to quickly run through some of our favorite games that we have played so far in 2022. What you got for me to get things started here, Trevor?
It has definitely been a light year so far.
Yes,
and especially the last couple months. I nothing really new has clicked since my last real big. I've dabbled with a little bit here and there, and I especially, because I'm recording 2 Let's Plays a week, I jump into a whole bunch of games, and then I'm like, yeah, they didn't really grab me, and then I never go back to them. And it's been a lot of that for the majority of this year, I would say. There hasn't been the steady stream that we've had in years past, and I think part of that is we're kind of feeling the prolonged effects of developers in a pandemic. So yeah, it's been an odd year so far. I as we go through the year, I keep kind of a spreadsheet going of the new games that I've played this year, and kind of have a ranking that's kind of always changing as I add new games to that list, as well as the games I've replayed, or as well as the non 2022 games that I played this year. And I also have a separate column for platinum trophies and stuff. But right now in the 2022 games column, I only have 7 completed games so far. It is versus admittedly, I'm probably the most prolific of the team for by the year's end. I usually have 50 games that I've played that I'm making my list from. It's why I typically do a top 20 versus just a top 10. But even 5 months into the year, I would expect that number to be doubled by now. Admittedly, a few of those games, two of them in particular, I probably put 80 plus hours into. So they're lengthy games, but much like last year, I'm sure the game I've played the most this year has been Fortnite, because I just hop into that every day, play a few matches, and then I go and do whatever other thing I'm going to do for the day. Or when there isn't really a game that's grabbing me, or when I'm going to watch TV or something instead, I haven't been bouncing. I play my Fortnite matches, and then I am not really playing anything else. But I'll kick things off with the last one that really, really, grabbed me, which was Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker saga.
Hey.
And I know that's one that's, I'm sure, going to be on your list as well. This is a game that I've been clamoring for a couple years. We finally got it here this year. And I went through, consumed it, engulfed everything about it. So much so, a week or two ago, they released a patch that added more capital ships to the game and added a handful more kyber bricks and stuff. I went in and cleaned all those up, so I'm back up to 100% in that game. All 1,200 bricks I've collected in there, and it was just, that is the charm and the vibes that I was in the mood for. Especially I know you and I differ on this, but I love that we're in a time where we're getting a lot of cool Star Wars content. I know I like a lot of the content we're getting these days more than you do. But I it's just cool that we got all these cool Star Wars shows, and we got this great Star Wars game that is just a loving homage to 9 films worth of stuff, as well as super deep cuts and weird little Easter eggs and all sorts of this crazy like extra stuff in there. If you want to go out and seek it out and do all of those, mini side quests and collect all 800 and some odd characters or whatever.
I think that Lego Star Wars is easily my game of the year so far. And I actually think there is a not insignificant case made that it might be hard to beat for my game of the year. I think it's my favorite Star Wars thing that has existed in years. The more I played, I think the more I just spend time in that game, the more I just really, really enjoy being in that world, right? Something that is just like such a big, I think, celebration and love letter to Star Wars, right? Like, so much so that, like, I don't know, you said you enjoy, like, the fact that you're getting so much Star Wars stuff more than me, and, like, I don't know, like, I'm increasingly coming around to the of just, like, I just like having Star Wars things, right? Like, even if I don't love them, right? Like, the Book of Boba Fett is a great example that, like, I think is fine, but definitely does not need to actually exist, probably. They should just call it Mandalorian 2.5. But, like, I like The Mandalorian, right? And I, am excited for where Obi-Wan Kenobi can go, and, like, Andor and all these other things. And obviously Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi, Fallen Survivor and kind of what we're getting there. And I think Lego Star Wars is such a, like, it does so many small things so well, is like my thing about that game. Like, things that it has no business even paying attention to, so many deep cuts, so many in-jokes, so many references. I think particularly in the original trilogy and prequels, I think the sequel trilogy, it makes fun of itself the least. But the other two, like, I think it really is just having fun with, the memes around these movies, right? And the jokes about the movies and characters interacting and how they interact together. And like I said, when we first did our sort of review conversation around Lego Star Wars, it is just the small moments, right? Like, I think still one of my favorite gaming moments of this year was super early in that game when I first played through A New Hope, right? And, like, got to, like, the Lars homestead, right? And, like, realizing that, like, I had never been inside of, like, the Lars homestead, like, in a game. And, like, just, like, walking around that being like, this is so weird. This is so, like, foreign and jarring and bizarre. And, like, I feel like I was walking on, like, the soundstage where they'd filmed that, right? Like 45 years ago. And that's a really cool thing, right? Like, getting to just live through a lot of these moments in, 4, 5, and 6 the most, but also, like, 1, 2, and 3, right? And, like, getting to see these movies that I don't love as much, but I have, like, this, like, childhood nostalgic kind of connection to, right? Like, I think we each do a little bit. And so it's just a really neat, fun, beautiful love letter. The game is gorgeous. It's so good to look at. And I think whether or not you have the characters talking, or whether you have them kind of doing the classic Lego video game,
the mumble mode, yeah.
Right? Yeah, like, it is so much fun, right? Like, I think humor is an underappreciated aspect of video games, right? Mainly because I think video games are usually not very funny. But when they are, they have this ability to be really funny and really work. And I think it's something Ratchet and Clank did really well. I think it's something that Asher's Playroom does really well. And I think it's something that the Lego games have always done well. And Lego Star Wars in particular, which I think opened itself to just really embracing its, the various kind of memes and pratfalls and mistakes and goofs and weirdness about Star Wars in, like, a really loving way, right? Like, I think that's key to, like, it's not like this cynical takedown of Star Wars, not like the red letter media version of the prequel trilogy. It's like, no, like, it's goofy and silly, but guess what? Like, that is Star Wars, right? Like, as, I saw this George Lucas quote flying around a few weeks ago of, like, I made Star Wars for 7-year-olds, right? To teach them about, like, how to be good people, teach them about how to be, like, caring and considerate of others, to, like, be an empathetic person, to, like, do all these things. And it's like, yeah, like, that is what Lego Star Wars is. Like, it's silly and goofy, but, like, it's also just like, these are good people trying to do good, and it's sort of ridiculous, and it embraces that in a way that I really love. And I think it kind of reminds you of or it certainly reminds me of why I fell in love with Star Wars to begin with, which is really refreshing, I think, after everything that has been the Star Wars fandom and community in the last 5 years. It's just refreshing to be like, oh, this is why I love this thing so much.
Mm-hmm.
Rad. And I'm very lucky that we got to do it. It came out, 9 months after we had done all the movies last year, which was another great reminder of like, all right, I do just love this.
Yeah. I think there's also the fact that it's full circle on the Lego games as well. Like the fact that the Lego games started with the Lego Star Wars 1, the prequels, and then Lego Star Wars 2, the sequel trilogy, the original trilogy. I've seen a lot of videos in my YouTube recommendations be like, let's compare, the game. Let's compare this level from the original game to, the new game, and where let's compare, the drastic change in the models. And it's
I've seen that.
It's something that I forget
Obi-Wan
how bad those games look if I actually went back and played those games from the PS2 era. Or just how basic Lego minifigs were in that era, regardless of whether you're in the game or you're talking about the actual Lego figurines, they've severely ramped up detail in character designs and stuff in the last 15 years, 20 years. And so there's a lot of just fun extra nuance that you can see in a character winking at the camera or something like that in really fun ways. It's obviously they spent so much time kind of reinventing the engine and redoing what the game, the fact that so much of this game is a third, over the shoulder third person shooter kind of thing, if you want it to be, is, wildly a departure from what those games used to be. And so many, a lot of the maps and the levels have you can go multiple different paths to get through this thing. Is a an interesting worlds. Approach to what used to be a very linear kind of thing. All the wide open worlds that you can go to go peruse the Lars homestead, or go to Mos Eisley or Mos Espa on Tatooine. There's just lots of fun detail littered throughout that game.
That's you sort of, I think, summed up perfectly, which is the game is just fun, right? And it is also just, I think, refreshing and enjoyable to just play a game that is just pure fun, right? There's no, scares or tension or drama or stakes to it. It's just just enjoy this thing. And I think Ratchet and Clank is a great example of a game that did that similar, or Asher's Playroom, which is just have fun in this sandbox for as long as you want. And that's really cool. And I think as someone who grew up playing with Legos as a very young child, one of the things that and I know you do because you have Legos everywhere, one of the things I'm really thankful for the Lego video games for doing is continuing that love, and I think making it be as much fun as building Legos were as a kid in a video game world now. And I think really that's the last thing I want to say on Lego Star Wars, which is it is such a great full circle moment too, in terms of, if you were, in high school when the original games came out, you very easily could have kids now that you're introducing to the Lego Star Wars games that way, right? And I think part of the fun that I've always tried to really, really, really emphasize about Star Wars, anytime we've ever talked about it on almost anything, is this is a series that is generational. And one of the great things about Star Wars is seeing a new generation come into this thing and love it for its quirks and its goofs and its gags. And not the things you necessarily like about it, but in new and different things, right? And whether that was the original trilogy to the special editions, to the prequels, to the sequels, right? And everything involved in that, and to now the Mando universe that we have here, I think Star Wars is always evolving and always bringing in new kids that find new things to like about it. And the Lego Star Wars game is such a great introduction to two of our shared passions, which is Star Wars and video games, right? You have young kids who you're introducing. You can have a 4 and 5 year old kid play Lego Star Wars and see how much fun, really three things, I guess, how much fun Legos can be, how much fun Star Wars can be, and how much fun video games can be, right? And all kind of one fell swoop. And kind of pass it on to like that next generation. And I think Lego Star Wars is such a great game to do that. And yeah, like it just seems like such a great kind of next generation way to bring kids into something that we both enjoy. So I definitely agree with Lego Star Wars. It's my game of the year so far. I'm excited to kind of see where you go from there.
Yeah, I just one last thing on the generational nature of Star Wars. One of the big things, obviously, with Obi-Wan, the series coming out, has been like one of the threads I've seen kind of covered in a lot of like the news beats is Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, feeling really bad and how maligned the prequels were at the time, and now that like the generation of kids who grew up with the prequels are out there and are and are writing about Star Wars or are out there kind of like, and they loved it at the time, but the voices that they were hearing, the critical voices, were the ones that grew up with the original trilogy. So like the fans of the prequel, your Yusuf Mageeds out there are out there talking it up now and like reinvigorating Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen. And there's also obviously, I think, as we did even within our own summer of Star Wars stuff, like the added realization that like the issues with the prequels are not on Ewan McGregor's shoulders, they're not on Hayden Christensen's shoulders. Like they were victims of bad elements and over-reliance on technology or bad writing or bad direction in those movies as well. And it wasn't Hayden Christensen's fault that like people didn't like Anakin for the wrong reasons or whatever. It was as much any number of other things because like people realize, oh, Hayden Christensen's actually been really great in other things.
Shattered Glass. Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice that like they're getting basically like their due all these years later, and they're getting another chance to show what they can do with these characters with Obi-Wan. And I'll be obviously we've seen the first couple episodes. I'm very curious to see how the rest of that series will play out. But that's just another cool little element of in the and I think that ties into like the reason I think you have more jokes on the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy is like the people working on these games grew up with those ones, and they're probably putting in jokes that they've thought about, time and time again. Whereas like the sequel trilogy is gonna get people deconstructing and family guying and robot chickening those movies for the next 20 years. And then you'll get those really like great insightful things. Or we've already there's also an element of like, so many of those jokes have already been made because the internet and Twitter
exist in a way different way,
and everybody made those jokes the night the thing came out and spoiled things. On the like people making jokes about why Leia hugs Rey at the end of the movie instead of Chewie. Like that's already
Shirtless
a thing.
Kylo Ren,
that's already a thing that then J.J. Abrams goes and tries to like fix by the time Episode 9 comes around. In a way that you didn't have that kind of like it's, I think there's an element of like, it's harder to find like new things to tackle when everybody has thrown their voices at some of these other items.
I think, the Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor thing, Ewan McGregor less so because he's Ewan McGregor. He's
everybody's always loved Ewan McGregor. Hayden Christensen has done significantly less since Star Wars.
Yeah, like his career was impacted by Star Wars in a very obvious way, in both good and bad ways. And I think I encourage, honestly, everyone to just go watch Hayden Christensen at Star Wars Celebration and just see, I think, in a very visceral way, what this outpouring has meant to him. Right? Like in particular, the clip with him and Ewan McGregor with Anthony Carboni, right? And like, I think is like such a beautiful, heartwarming thing of like the best of what Star Wars fans can be, and like what this community can be, and this kind of reciprocal nature of like the actors, what they give us and what we can kind of give them. Because what Hayden Christensen went through, what Jake Lloyd went through, obviously is young Anakin, who was a 9-year-old child and was basically like bullied out of the acting industry because of his performance in Phantom Menace, was never okay. And so, I love to kind of see them get some moments of like, people did love this thing I make, because you obviously put so much of yourself into those performances, And I think that's been one of the kind of beautiful things of seeing these kids grow up now. And yeah, Yusuf Magid and the like get to talk about how much they love this, or how this got them into the series, or how this helped them out in a difficult time, or whatever it might have been. And yeah, I think the prequel trilogy, maybe more than almost anything that exists in media in the last 50 years, had an impossible, thankless task to try to kind of fulfill, right? In terms of like 3 movies that are basically perfect, that everyone basically loves, that are regarded as like 3 of the best movies ever. And it's like, great, do that again. That shouldn't be that hard, right? And it's like, well, no, it's very hard to do that, actually. The fact that we got 3 movies that are all really, really great and magical is not normal. And so I think the kind of burden of expectations and weight of what this had to kind of follow up doomed it from the start. And I think nowadays, even last year when we did some more Star Wars, like, it was sort of refreshing just to be able to like enjoy those movies for what they are, flaws and all. And not go into it being like, this is going to be just as good. It's like, no, this isn't going to be as good, but like, we will enjoy it, and you'll find the things that you like about it now, right? And I think as like, you know, people in their late 20s or 30s now, it's like, I don't have time to like nitpick the things I don't like with the prequel trilogies. I want to talk about the things I enjoy about them, the things that I think they mostly do well. And I think that's largely what people have kind of come down to as well. And I think the Lego Star Wars game finds a lot to love and enjoy about the prequel trilogies, which is how we got here. Trevor, what is your second game that you want to give a shout out to?
Next game I want to give a shout out to is actually the first one that I played this year, and that is Nobody Saves the World from Drinkbox Studios. I originally played that beginning of the year on Game Pass when it came out on Xbox. It's now available. It was basically like Xbox exclusive for like 3 months. It's now available out there elsewhere. You can play it on Switch, on PlayStation, and it's another great Drinkbox game in the spirit of Guacamelee series or something like it's not as dark as Severed was. It is much more leaning into the humor of Guacamelee, but it's instead of Guacamelee was like their approach at a Castlevania like or Metroidvania like, this is Nobody Saves the World is very much a like their approach to Zelda like. It is,
I was just looking.
It is their you know, you like instead of getting different items and stuff in different dungeons, you get different forms that your body can take, and you switch between forms. You have like different attacks that you can kind of equip, but you're going through, you're filling, you're taking quests, and you're kind of going around kind of clearing out this map. And yeah, there's just there's light RPG elements to it. There's a ton of fun humor to it and quirky, you know, aspects to the story of the game. While all the time you are, you know, playing this character Nobody, who like the default is you are a humanoid-esque like thing with like sunken eyes that is like you are basically like almost an undead kind of thing. But then that, you know, the first thing you transform into is a mouse, and you can go around and bite things, and you get like poison effects. Then you like unlock the ability to be a knight and a ranger, and as you like level up each of these different things, you unlock extra skills for them, and then you start like unlocking other forms that you can kind of like level up and power up to, and then you get to a point where you can start mixing and matching a lot of those things, and you can create just wild and crazy attack combinations. I had a blast doing that like single player. If you throw in like the fact that it's co-op and you can basically have like 2 people doing that, I'm sure you could come up with like impossibly like broken combinations of abilities and the game does a cool thing of like, it gives you like little kind of quests to like encourage you to mix and match things in certain ways, and be like use the horse, you know, back kick power with the rat's poison ability or something like that, and kill 10 enemies like that or something like that, and you'll get like that kind of thing, and that'll give you experience points to like level up a thing. And yeah, it was a ton of fun. I basically like 100%ed the game. The only thing I didn't do with it is like go back and play the New Game Plus. But it's definitely something that like I'm kind of like keeping an eye out for when it goes on sale on PlayStation or something to pick it up again and play through it and 100% it and New Game Plus it for the platinum or something. So maybe I'll do that by year's end. But yeah, that was an early game of the year contender for me. And by the nature of how small my list is, it's still obviously on the list, but it's also in the upper echelon of the list still so far. So I can very easily see it still in my top 10 come year's end, because it's just another fun, great Drinkbox game.
Yeah, I love that. Drinkbox is great. Everyone go check out anything Drinkbox does, especially Guacamelee. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game, again, also indicative of the weird year for games so far. It's going to be Dying Light 2. I have played a lot of this game. I think it's very strongly okay to good, right? I really hope that Trevor ends up playing Dying Light 2 almost as a bit more than anything else. And I would love to just like play through this together. I think it is a game that definitely, I feel increasingly confident you're saying, is definitely just less scary, I think, or certainly you can navigate around more of the scares than in Dying Light 1.
I mean, are you going out there and doing a lot of like nighttime stuff?
You don't have to. That's
right.
Like, if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can just completely avoid that, which you could in Dying Light 1, but I feel like Dying Light 1 had a higher amount of, like, either main missions or side missions that made you do nighttime stuff, and this one definitely feels like it has a way smaller amount of those that, like, make you do stuff at night. I think that the parkour system is great, right? Like, that's my big thing, right? Like, this is the game that is the most fun to just do parkour jumpy shit around in. And I think the original Dying Light 1, that was the case. I think the DLC kind of ruined that a little bit by making it more about vehicles. And this very much brings that back in. And there are very few games that just feel as fun to just like run around and do things as this. Especially as you kind of get more of the cities opened up and kind of can traverse more and more areas. You get in like chased by like the different zombies is always has such a great like visceral feel to it when you hit like a safe spot and kind of like skid into the thing. And then the, more Dying Light 2 specific things like the kind of branch and pass like Fallout-esque kind of New Vegas elements to it, I think work as well as you want them to work. In terms of like how much you put into that and how much you care about that, will I think go a long way to determine if you think it's going to be fun or not, right? Like if you're kind of like, it's whatever, it's going to be a whatever thing for you. If you're like, yeah, like I want to really see how, much this can go and I want to kind of be invested in this, I think it's like fun moments to be had and fun challenges and turns that you can kind of go about and like see the consequences of your actions in really cool ways. Like it's not Until Dawn or Detroit Become Human in terms of like its butterfly effect, but it is neat to see what can happen, right? And kind of the gray morality that Dying Light 2 finds itself in much more than the original game, which was much more like, we're the good guys, these are the bad guys. I think the small moments it gives you of Dying Light 2 story and canon bleeding through this one, I always really enjoy. I mean, again, I'm a sucker for Dying Light 1, but I think it's really neat and what it does in terms of exploring what this world looks like decades into it, as opposed to like in the immediate aftermath of it, is a cool idea, right? Like it's something that obviously like what The Walking Dead looked like 25 years into it is like an interesting idea that we don't really get to see explored, obviously. And like, I think it's neat to see like, 25 years roughly into, this game, what does that world look like? What does this characters, the few ones you meet from that world look like? And I think they're like really interesting ideas of like how society sort of like rebuilds itself in like fragmented ways in like a post-apocalyptic scenario. I guess The Last of Us is like the best example of something like that. But this one leans a bit more into like tech than I think Last of Us does. I think the game looks nice. I don't think it looks beautiful necessarily, but I think it's a nice looking video game. And there are certainly some moments, like some scenic views that are very, very good. The character models are still the character models from Dying Light 1 in terms of like, like it's a Fallout, Elder Ring, kind of like generic character models. Same from like The Witcher kind of thing. Like they don't look great, but like they're serviceable. They get the job done. Mass Effect. But like it is a game that I don't play games like this, but I know people that do. That just like put a podcast in, put an album on, and just play Dying Light. Especially if you're just doing like side missions, you can have so much fun playing that game. Like it is just a blast to play and enjoy, I think. And that I think is so many of my favorite moments of that game are just those kind of beats, as opposed to like the main story narrative, which I think is not as like subversive as the original Dying Light was, I think.
Yeah, I definitely I've joked, and you've seen it in the Slack. I've joked with Cameron the idea of like if Dying Light 2 goes on sale, maybe I'll pick it up and play through it just to see if I can beat it before Cameron does.
Right.
Because obviously he's been doing our Friday Night Dying Light series. Like part 17 and countings right now. And it did finally go on sale as part of like the current state of play sale, but it was like only 20% or whatever. I was like, that $48 is still more than I'm interested in paying to try that game out, especially because it does have a lot of elements that I know aren't going to mesh with me. Most notably the like weapon degradation, stuff like that, having to constantly change out weapons and kind of do that. I'm just like, just give me a sturdy bat or something that I can just constantly always use. But yeah, I do find myself increasingly like looking at my Dying Light 1 copy that I do have already, being like, maybe I'll just boot that one up to like get a feel for if I would be interested in it.
Dying Light 1 has a co-op mode as well, though, so if you needed someone to and easily play that game again. I
mean, it's the kind of thing of like, right now State of Play's got it on sale for 20% off. I'm sure, especially with as light it looks like as the end of the year is going to be, I can probably pick this up at least half price on a Black Friday deal or something like that, and maybe squeeze this in as like an end of the year kind of game for me if I really want to like do it and bite the bullet and do that.
Right.
But right now I'm just kind of like, or I could just not be stressed out about that kind of that experience. But yeah, shout out to Dying Light 2, sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Next one on my list, continuing my trend of Zelda likes, I want to give a huge shout out to Tunic. This is another one this is one I've kept an eye on for a couple of years now, because I originally played this at like PAX West 2018 or something like that. Some long time ago, and I remember like it kicking my ass and talking to the developer about it. He's like, yeah, I mean, like part of it is that's what the game's really going to be, but part of it is also I ramp up the difficulty because I'm trying to churn a lot of people through a booth, and I don't want you like locked into the the game for 30 minutes on the demo when I only have 2 stations or whatever. So I was like, totally get it. This is a game that I've had like a very up and down journey with, because when the demos started coming out, people were like, oh, it's much more a Souls-like in terms of like difficulty of like, you really kind of need to learn the patterns and stuff like that. And I was like, damn it. But then like the week it came out or whatever, both it got announced that it, like at the last minute, it was like a Game Pass game. So I was like, cool, no harm, no foul in checking that out. And it had accessibility options or difficulty options and stuff like that of, okay, you can hit this toggle and have infinite health, you'll be fine. And I played through it on that and had so much fun exploring and finding the puzzles of that game, because they like that is the game's strength for me. And I love not having to worry about the combat or the specifically the boss fights. Like the combat in and around the world's fine. You there's a handful of different enemy types and stuff, and you just have to not get overwhelmed. But it's the boss fights where it's like, okay, I don't have the patience for this. Just let me hack and slash it for 2 minutes and be done with it, and get back to the puzzles and get back to finding the secrets of this game. The thing that obviously I don't want to spoil too much, but like the great joy of the game is that like it uncovers itself. The collectibles that you find in the game are pages of a original NES like instruction booklet, and so you find these like pages that give you hints on where to go next, but it's in a different languages in a made up language, but there will be like a few things that are translated, or there will be notes in the margins that you can kind of decipher and figure out what to do, or how to unlock a new mechanic will be found in these pages that you kind of uncover and discover throughout the game. And it was just so cool and so inventive, and a great modern interpretation of the throwback. It is everything that you can very easily hate about the original Legend of Zelda that you and I have discussed many a time on here.
Right.
But because it has these options for you, like there's more. The game gives you everything you need to know to find its secrets in a way that Legend of Zelda does not. Like in Legend of Zelda, you just have to know that you can drop a bomb here and it'll open a secret cave. In Tunic, you can find the page that will give you like gibberish stuff that points you at that cave, and you can find like the runic translation or whatever that like indicates, oh, that's the symbol that I saw on this other page that equals bomb. Okay, so if I use a bomb on that location, that means I'm gonna probably find something cool, and sure enough you do. And so there's just such a joy and delight to the discovery of Tunic that I would not have experienced had people not pointed out that it did have like a accessibility turn invincibility on kind of option, because I was ready to write that game off and be like, it's cool, love the art design, and I wish it success, but it wasn't until I found out that I was like, okay, cool, I don't have to stress out about the combat. I don't have to spend 20 hours trying to memorize the patterns of these two bosses I'm going to only fight once. Great. I can just kind of like enjoy it, do the hack and slash that I want to enjoy, and then just get back to finding the secrets that they've put into this game in really cool and interesting ways. So shout out to Tunic. Yeah,
absolutely. I love that.
It is only on Xbox, but it is also a game I have 100%ed in terms of like, I got 1,000 out of 1,000 gamer score on it.
My last game that I'm gonna give a shout out to is the most recent one I have started playing. Just started playing it. I am only literally like 2 hours into the game, but some might say it is the biggest game so far this year, or in the run-in, which would be Horizon Forbidden West. I finally started playing Horizon, Trevor. Spoiler, game real pretty. Game real pretty.
Especially compared to Dying Light, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Lego Star Wars is very beautiful, but very different. But I'm literally just started over the long weekend, but I will say this. In the first couple hours, I enjoy Aloy more than I did in the first couple hours of the original game, which is sort of what I expected because of where she kind of ends the first game. I feel like I want to spend my entire time talking about the game just about how beautiful the game is. The game is gorgeous. I think I'm excited to kind of dive more into it. The kind of initial story teases you get in the first couple hours have me intrigued, have me excited. It is a contender for Game of the Year just by the very nature of what it is, especially with certain games getting kind of delayed already into 2023. I'm definitely very curious and very excited to kind of see the next chapters of where this game kind of unfolds, where the story kind of goes, where the beats kind of go from here. But the thing I will say as like my last note on Horizon is I don't know if I had played Horizon, the original Horizon in like 4 years, probably. I'm trying to think like whenever the DLC came out, that would have been.
It was all 2016.
So yeah, I mean 5 years ago. Then
2018, I guess, right?
Oh, then 4 years ago, yeah. Whenever it came out, 4 or 5 years ago, roughly. I feel like I had forgotten how fun the gameplay of Horizon is, like how enjoyable it is, just like the minute to minute, second to second gameplay of like
2017,
taking on like the
2017,
taking on the robot, like taking on the robot dinosaurs, like fighting all of them, and even just like small stuff, just like walking around and like running through like your like different weapons and inventory and like sprinting across the map and just like looking at the vistas and getting like the game is just fun to exist in. And one of the things I said really positively about the first Horizon that I think is true, in here as well, is it is so easy just to like slip into this world and just kind of get lost in it, right? And I think, a game that I think that's true as well is like, I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey did that same thing for me. And this is obviously a big giant game like that is. And it is so easy just to be in the world of Horizon and just kind of lose yourself in it. And that is maybe the thing I have as the biggest takeaway this far into the game is just like literally doing nothing and just having fun in that game is so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, Horizon Forbidden West, since neither of us certainly are going to be like Elden Ring people. Cam's really the only Elden Ring guy on our site, and I'm sure he's going to be pushing for that to be like, that's probably his game of the year right now. But Horizon is easily my game of the year right now. And that's that alongside like Skywalker Saga is the one that I've put the most time into this year. I basically like played that when it came out and just kind of like consumed it for the next couple weeks. We talked about, I think on this podcast, we did kind of a like in the lead up to it, like let's look back at the first Horizon. And on that, like we talked about like liking the mechanics, liking the gameplay, but not really remembering too much of the story beats and stuff like that, or the characters. And I think the best aspects, the best like compliments I can give to Horizon 2 is Horizon Forbidden West is that like it, I think, recognized that was a lot of people's takeaway from the first game. And so like the second game is built around some like incredibly beautiful moments and very cinematic sequences in its mission structure, and kind of like there's going to be a point in the game where it's going to be like, okay, like you can do one of these three things. You can do them in any order. We'll give you kind of the recommended, like, here's the low level option. Here's the medium level option. Here's the difficulty one option. So it might be best to do that one later or whatever. But like each of those three things takes you down like a path of like story plot and stuff like that. And each of them are beautiful, memorable, like great things, have a lot of great, like awesome, interesting characters brought into the fold. To your point of you already like Aloy a lot better than you did. I think the first game is largely about Aloy as an isolated person, and the second one frequently partners her up with other people. In the opening that you've already played, she's already she went out with Varl from the first game, and he's kind of like brought into the fold, and she gives him a focus to very early on to make sure to really bring him into her world and see the world as she sees it. And the game is filled with that. Like this Horizon Forbidden West is about her opening up to other people and trusting other people and kind of building a community, building her own tribe in a way that she's never had before. And I think there's a lot of like great, because of that, you get a lot of great memorable characters that I will remember years down the line still. And then the story and the adventure throughout the world, I think, also does a lot of great stuff in that regard too. Like it's just really designed. Like there is a sequence in that will always be the first thing that comes to mind because of how beautiful and how wonderfully it like builds upon itself over the course of a couple of missions that we get here.
But yes, I like, and I think that is sort of a lot of the review stuff I saw was on similar notes, right? In terms of like that community that you're building around Aloy. And I think this feeling of, instead of her, I think, kind of fighting against and rebelling against kind of the various cultures around, she kind of is building and crafting what her own tribe and her own culture would look like for her, is like a lot of the stuff that I'm most excited about. Like to see what this community of people that she has, kind of like this ragtag group that she has from the first game that I'm sure she'll get more from this game, what that'll look like, right? And what those kind of memorable moments will be. And to say nothing of like I'm sure insane action set pieces and show pieces that the game will have. Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting, right? It's like the first big, like, huge AAA game I would have played since, I don't even remember anything from last year, so whatever it was last year, but that year's already blinked away from my memory. But yeah, it's just exciting to kind of hop into something of that scale and of that size and caliber. And so I'm not sure where it will take us, but I'm very excited to kind of be along for the ride for Forbidden West. Trevor, you got any more final games you want to give a shout out and some love to?
Just a couple. I'll give a few little, like, very brief things of the other games that I've checked out this year that are still, like, currently at least still contenders. Triangle Strategy was really fun in terms of the, like, tactical RPG stuff and the, as a spiritual successor to a Final Fantasy Tactics kind of game. My biggest issue with that game, and why it's probably on the lower end of my list right now, is the pacing of it is just very misbalanced. There's very little in the way of, like, combat, and then, like, I would say, like, 20% of the game is, like, the combat sequences. 15 to 20% is, like, this cool idea of using the scales of judgment or whatever, where you basically have to, like, convince your allies on which course of action you want to take, using information you've gleaned from around the world, and stuff like that. And basically, like, each of them gets a vote. You can kind of try and convince them to vote the way you want them to vote, but if you don't say the right things, you don't sway them, they'll vote, their own conscience or their kind of own decisions. So that's, like, an interesting idea. And then, like, the other 60% of the game is cutscenes. Very, very long, very Game of Thrones kind of storytelling, like, cutscenes that are not as interesting as I think the game thinks they are sometimes.
Classic, yeah.
In way, or I found myself getting very confused by certain factions because I was like, okay, I don't remember who's part of that faction, and the names all kind of sound samey. So, like, there was a point where I was like, did you just completely change this relationship I have with this other person into, like, this weird incestuous thing? I don't like that. And then it was realizing, oh no, I was mixing up two characters in my head because of the deep, like, historical lore that the game gives you, but doesn't give you a codex to really, like, dig into and like review and figure out, here's this person's biography or whatever so, like, there was a whole bunch of stuff where I was just like, I was very, like, put off by those elements of the game. But the combat of it, very cool. The probably the bottom of my list right now is, and the one most likely to get booted as more games come out this year, is going to be Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. It's a Borderlands like, and the big, like, it's, if you like Borderlands, this is that, in terms of, like, the gameplay. But the two big, like, detractions against it for me are, one, like, it is billed as and is supposed to be basically a spiritual successor to the extraordinary Borderlands 2 DLC, Assault on Tiny Tina's, or Assault on Dragon Keep, and it doesn't have enough fun with the tabletop RPG idea of the game. And as somebody who has gotten significantly down that rabbit hole in the last year, I was disappointed that, like, it just didn't have a lot of fun in that way. And then the other big drawback is that it doesn't play within the rich cast of characters of the Borderlands universe. Like, there are so many characters that they could pull in there, like they've done in the other DLC, and kind of given them, like, here's what the fantasy mythology version of that character is going to be, and we're going to, bring in that character and bring in that actor and stuff. They have almost none of that. There's, like, 3 or 4 characters maybe that, like, cross over into this. Like, Claptrap and Torg are the only two that I can really remember of note. And it's like, I think it's just a missed opportunity to not bring in more of that fun cast of characters. And then the most recent one, that was, a surprising bit of fun, and it's a pretty bite-sized game. I don't know if it'll last the year in my top 10, but right now it's in there. Is Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. Both Cameron and I talked about this on recent episodes of That Nerdy Site Show. It's a fun hack and slash kind of little 13 to 15 hour RPG. You're going into dungeons, you're collecting resources, you're bringing those resources back to help build up the town and unlock the smithy so you can upgrade your weapons, and unlock the armorer so you can upgrade your armor and stuff like that. And there's little Metroidvania elements to the game. And it's just it was a fun little bite-sized experience that I got to hop into and check out because it's on Game Pass. So shout out to that. The big thing about that game is it's basically Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes was kickstarted a couple years ago. It's by the people behind the Suikoden games. And the 100 Heroes is going to be much more in the Suikoden vein, but this game is kind of seemingly setting the groundwork for hey, maybe here's a bunch of characters that you will meet who will be your recruitable party members in 100 Heroes. Right. So, and it, had a fun, colorful cast of characters that you help out in this little 13, 15 hour adventure kind of game. So shout out to Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. Yeah, that's what I've been playing so far this year.
Fantastic. That's a great list of games for both of us. Shout out to all those. Let us know in the comments below what you've been planning to check out. Otherwise, let's wrap this up. Trevor, do you have any shout outs?
Well, real quick, I just want to ask you, looking ahead to the rest of the year, do you have any, as we've touched on, some big games are already being kicked out of 2022 into 2023. Are there any notable potential big games that you're still kind of looking ahead to for this year that you think is probably a surefire game of the year contender for you?
That's a good question.
I think the one I would think of for you most likely is going to be Gotham Knights.
So I think Gotham Knights for sure. I was actually going to say Supermassive's Game of the Quarry, which comes out in 2 weeks, I think. Which is basically a spiritual successor to Until Dawn, is one that I'm really excited about as someone who likes Until Dawn a lot, but is kind of in and out on some of their other standalone shit. I'm really excited for the aesthetic of what that game can be, and I think how much fun it can be to do let's plays of us together, right, kind of thing, in streams of that game for the site. So I think that could be a lot of fun. So that's a big one for me. Outside of that, I don't know. I think Gotham Knights, obviously, I am optimistic for, right? I am hopeful that will have, I think, the things I want that game to have. Because I know that there are quite a few people who are less optimistic on it than I am, but I'm in a Batman-y mood with this year. So if the game is just here are Bat characters, just beating people up and having a pretty decent story, it's that's probably enough for me. And if it's better than that, fantastic. But those, I think, are kind of the immediate big game that I can kind of think of that I'm excited for. One kind of immediate and one kind of further out.
Yeah, I think for me, the one that actually has a firm release date that I'm most excited about at this point is a weird one that I don't know ultimately how much time I'd put into it, but it's the next one I'm excited for is 2 Point Campus, coming out in August, because it's in the spirit of the Theme Hospital, 2 Point Hospital games, hospital simulator kind of stuff. And then beyond that, I'm hopeful that Forspoken is good. That's one I'm sure I'll check out when the time comes. But then for me, it's a lot of the most likely they're going to come out this year, but the smaller indie games Goodbye Volcano High is one that's still high on my list of I can't wait for that one to come out, because that looks super my jam. And yeah, I think Bear and Breakfast is another one that looks like a ton of fun. Oxenfree 2 whenever that one comes out. That's like
I was just looking at that. I was like, when does Oxford 2 come out? I was literally just Googling that, Trevor. All over that.
If Sea of Stars comes out this year, that's one I kickstarted a couple years back. That's by the team behind what is it? It was like the ninja one that was like you go back in from 8-bit to 16-bit times. The Messenger, that's the one. It's the team behind the Messenger, but it is a Chrono Trigger-esque game, and I played like a backer demo of it, a year plus ago or something like that, and it's like this is doing what I want it to do. So like when it comes out, I'm excited. I'm here for it. I'm like I routinely get like notifications in the Discord for it. I'm like I'm not gonna keep an eye on all the stuff they're doing on that, but that's one that like when it comes out, I'm hopeful that it's gonna be a standout. So yeah. And then obviously the biggest one that, fingers crossed ends up not getting bumped. But that's going to be God of War Ragnarok has not yet been bumped. And it's one of those things like, we're recording this obviously before this week's State of Play where maybe it'll get, we'll see more from it and they'll put a release date on or something like that. But it's one I'm kind of expecting it to be 2023, and I will be very pleasantly surprised if it ends up being 2022.
That's sort of my thing.
So yeah.
Agreed. Well, fantastic. Trevor, any shout outs on your end that you want to give to anyone?
Nope. Nothing comes to mind.
Awesome. I've got one. It is called The Future of Star Wars is the Skywalkers, just not in the way you'd think, from Polygon by Mik Deitz. It is a really interesting piece. I just dropped it in Slack for you. I think that I have lots of thoughts on where the Rise of Skywalker movie takes us as Star Wars fans, and I think that, among those thoughts are mostly negative ones, but this is a really cool way to fix one of the things I don't like about Rise of Skywalker, which is that Rey takes on the Skywalker mantle and turns it into something that I think is a really interesting and cool idea, and kind of ties into the sequel trilogy's flirtations at times, because it never commits to it, idea of like this like middle ground between the Jedi and the Sith, and kind of exploring something new and different from both of those things. I thought it was really interesting to read. I thought it was a really kind of interesting article on how to like make something that maybe isn't great into something that can be great, and also kind of give some direction out of the disaster that is how the sequel trilogy ended. And so, as this like radioactive stepchild that like no one really talks about or touches anymore, and they've gone as far as even like start to include non-sequel trilogy characters into like Galaxy's Edge, this could be a way to like make this into something for the sequel trilogy to kind of build on past that. So I thought it was a really good article. I thought it was really fun. I encourage everyone to go check that out. Otherwise, let's wrap up the show. If you like what you heard, you can go over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Go check out the podcast here. Leave a little comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell to get notified when a new video goes live Monday through Saturday over at That Nerdy Site on YouTube. You can also go over to thatnerdysite.com and check out all the latest reviews, features, content, and podcasts over on the main site as well as, of course, going over to the podcast service of your choice, liking and subscribing to the podcast there, and rating and reviewing us on iTunes. Give us those 5 stars. Tell us why you like us so much. It means the world to us. Finally, you can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything that you want to plug on this week's episode?
I will give a shout out to That Bond Show, the other podcast we recorded as our doubleheader tonight. Yes. Go check out That Bond Show. We are winding down. This week's episode is going to be all about Skyfall, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody. stellar standout.
Yeah.
But will it top our lists? I've already written like the copy for the tweets and stuff like that. So
Nice.
so yeah, go check out that Bond show on youtube.com/thatnerdysite every Saturday at 9 a.m. for at least the next 3-4 weeks, because we're doing Skyfall, then Spectre, then No Time to Die, and then we're gonna have one final like wrap up episode. So yeah, go check out all that stuff.
I encourage everyone to go do that. Skyfall episode in particular, I thought was a really good conversation on, spoiler alert, very good movie. You can also go check out, I will say, you can go find me at LeftyLoggy, LOGGY. The Let's Plays, of course, we have going live Tuesdays and Thursdays that Trevor knocks out. The Friday night Dying Lights Let's Play series that Cameron is still working on. And then I will go encourage everyone to go check out That Nerdy Site Show every Monday that goes live. I was going to say every Sunday when we record it, but every Monday that goes live. I think it is a nice little weekend start for you to kind of get a little treat there. And we've got lots of good content happening around for us to discuss and talk about. Go check out that D Plus show. We just had the Obi-Wan Kenobi season premiere episode go live last week, and the week before that we had Chippendales as well. And then in a couple weeks we're going to have the series finale of Obi-Wan, and then Miss Marvel kind of heading into what month is that? June and July. So get excited for all that stuff. I'm actually really excited for D+. Lots of good stuff is happening over there. So go check out all those. Go check out That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site all across the internet. And otherwise, for myself, for Trevor, for all of us here at That News You Care About, play your games and be good to each other.